All right. Welcome to Protect the Future. What's on the horizon? This is the podcast where we talk to professionals in the security, investigations, and executive protection industry about future risks and threats and how people, processes, and technology can be instrumental in protecting them and keeping their businesses safe. With me today is my good friend, colleague, and I think we call ourselves partners in crime, Sandra Stibbards, right?
Yeah, we do. I actually consider you definitely my partner in crime in so many things that we do together. I love that we do so much together. It's great.
Well, this is going to be a fun conversation too, Sandra, because I don't have any really concept for what we're going to talk about other than the fraud angle. And I'm sure you don't either, but it's something that came across my feed for my news, and it was talking about the risks of online dating. And I got to thinking, I've got two millennials that are both in school, and how are they meeting people and how are they dating? And I thought, wow, what a challenge this must be. We probably, you and I are old enough to have met our significant others long before the internet happened. But now, how do you do it? How do you meet people in a what is a virtual environment? And how do you feel safe? How do you avoid the risks and the threats? And I know you, as a private investigator, have dealt or worked with clients on these issues. I, on the other side of the risk coin, here have worked on the trust and safety side, working for Facebook and others that deal with the online aspects of the threats and the risks. So I thought we could just kind of dig in there, and talk a little bit more about what are these risks that uh, people that are looking for a companion or looking for a significant other are going to face in kind of an online environment.
Yeah, the online environment can be a very dangerous place, but what amazes me in the world that we're living in now, you touched on it. We come from a time where this didn't exist, but then we have our children that started, maybe in their early 20s going into their 30s, depending on who they are. They were really born into this world, and to the point where they almost don't understand that there is a risk because it's so normal for them. For us, at least, we had the option to learn as we started developing in the world. And unfortunately, it can be a very dangerous place, especially when it comes to the word fraud is what you used. And it's true because people will use fraudulent identities to develop relationships with people. There are people out there, we know, are trying to meet people. They want to have that significant other. And some of these dating apps can be a wonderful place, and people have been fortunate. The sad and dark side of this is there's a lot of people that haven't been fortunate. They get catfished, or they're just flat out lied to, or they're drawn into a scam thinking they've met that person and then end up getting taken into a very dark world where they've either lost their money or they might end up getting stalked. And the unfortunate piece of that is they don't see it coming because they're not even aware of the information they've put out there and how they're representing themselves. So for me, looking at my colleagues, my friends, and my world in general, when it comes to cases, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly with this. And unfortunately, you're probably going to agree with this. I've seen more of the ugly than the good.
Yeah. I had a client early on in my investigations practice who was a retired aerospace engineer. So not somebody who would you would think of would be foolish or not careful with how he works online or who he meets with. And he wanted me to see if we could find a person that he had sent $10,000 of his hard-earned retirement to. And he said that she was in Estonia or someplace in Eastern Europe, and he had very little information. He had a picture of her, and they had only talked on the phone, and he had an email address. And basically, with that information, although it was very little, it took us a little while, we were able to locate similar profiles that this person had set up, and they were out catfishing more and more people. And I think folks just are looking for companionship. They're looking for somebody to talk to, and that's sure what happened. He was a widower. She talked to him, and he fell for a hardship story, which was, my little brother needs surgery. Can you send me some money? and then she disconnected and never talked to him again, because she had gotten, or the person had gotten what they needed, and they're on their way, which is really unfortunate. Can you share any, without identifying who your clients are, but can you share any specific circumstances that you've had to investigate there?
Yeah, I can give you two really specific ones. One that leans toward the side that you're talking about, a more minimalistic predicament where I got an email from a friend that said, my best friend is about to have the guy she's fallen in love with fly over from England to see her. She wants to
Wow.
be sure he is who he says he is. And, there was a VK account. It's, the Russian version
Russian
of
Facebook.
Facebook. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And the quick attempt that I had, luckily, like your situation, there was an email address that we were able to work off of. So what happened? I did a tracking on the email, set it up, sent something, got them to open it, and sure enough, the guy was sitting in Lagos, Nigeria.
Yeah.
So I was able to save them from doing anything wrong. But the more recent one that I'm dealing with is so unfortunate. The person has been taken in, and I want to say this before I go any further, that I want people to understand, if they get taken into these scams in a dating site or start getting stalked by somebody in a dating site, I promise you, you're not stupid. You're not unintelligent. It's not that you did something dumb, because these scams are so high end and so good. All it means is that you're a good person and you are looking to connect with somebody. So I want to remind people out there that you did nothing wrong, and these are the evil people, and don't beat yourself up for it. This situation is why I'm bringing that up, because sure enough, on one of the dating apps out there, she met the man that she was looking for. They've been talking for a while, lots of pictures going back and forth with each other. And he is supposedly in the crypto world and was teaching her how to learn to invest in crypto.
Oh.
And so the situation escalated from there. And he showed her how to open a wallet and do all of the things you do in crypto. And he showed her the website he'd been using. And she ended up investing a small amount and then getting better at it and investing again. And then sure enough, she realized at one point, when she got redirected and did another bigger investment, all of a sudden he disappeared. And so with this scenario, there were no email addresses, there was no phone number. They strictly only communicated through the dating app.
Oh.
She had no real identifiers. She thought she did. His name is all these gorgeous pictures of him and all, the whole story, the history. He gave the whole story. What ultimately I determined in this predicament was that the site that he gave her where she could practice, investing in crypto, had just been set up 2 months earlier. That domain had just been registered.
Oh,
And then the
wow.
redirect, when they did that, when she sent that final investment, that redirect that she ended up clicking on had just been created 2 weeks prior to her doing that. This was something that I had to explain to her. I did reverse imaging on some of the pictures and designs on his shirts, saw that they had faked these and were logos from things that were altered. It was just such an unfortunate predicament. And she was doing it because she was learning and she was in love. And
Yeah.
this is so heartbreaking. And I had to, although I did a lot of work and determined, my results were to tell her, yes, this is a bigger issue. These sites were probably used on a lot of people, not just you, at the same time. And it's a huge scam, big teams of people, and there's going to be no tracing back on any of it. So it's sad, and I feel very bad for her. And, anybody that gets caught in that, it's heartbreaking. So those are a couple of examples of situations done on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Well, it's good to talk about from the angle. Some people may not be familiar with how these
Mhm.
engagements work online. And I'm no expert in this, by the way, but I totally understand how messaging works on an application. A lot of the frauds that I looked at when I was at Facebook involved what we called inbox. Everybody else calls Facebook Messenger.
Yeah,
Um, and so, in fact, the really horrible things that happen usually happen through a messaging, some type of messaging app, right?
yep,
Because people feel like, oh, well, this is a private message between you and me. How could anybody intercept it? And if it's not, one thing I want people to understand: when you send something across electronically, once it's gone, it's gone. It's out there, and it could be
absolutely.
screenshotted. It could be taken offline, taken out of context. But to kind of talk about the makeup of these apps, where we see fraud, and certainly there's fraud in the conversation, there's fraud in the engagement, and things like that. But additionally, just like you were talking about, we've talked about deep fakes in the past, and if you're taking an image and you're manipulating it, it's no longer an authentic image. So, how can people look for that, or can they? Are the deep fakes getting so good that there's no way to try and understand, is this really the person who I think they are when they're on this app?
It's a really good question. I was trying to do some reverse imaging on, for example, this most recent situation, doing reverse imaging on the face. And honestly, I was finding lots of very similar images. But here's the thing: there are sites out there, and I'm not going to give the
Yeah,
link to the site right now. I don't want somebody to take and run with it. But there
right.
are sites out there that will actually computer generate a picture of a person, and it's not a real person.
Completely
So
generated. Yeah.
exactly. So when it comes to the images, that could be the case. Someone could also, just grab somebody's profile from some weird social media platform in another part of the world where nobody would ever find those images and take somebody's profile pictures from there. The whole concern is this. I love that you brought up the messaging piece, because that's where it gets tricky. We all know that somebody can lie on their profile. We know that they can provide inaccurate details about themselves or just falsify details, and the fake pictures, of course. And maybe you're actually going to start talking to them and try to develop a relationship. Well, when you stay within the messaging piece of that particular platform, whatever dating platform it is, you're keeping yourself secure in that aspect.
Yeah.
However, there's the opposite side of that. They're keeping themselves secure too. Do you really know what you're getting? Do you really know what's real? Should you be giving your real information? These are the questions that you have to start asking yourself, because what if you start there and you give too much of it? One of the things that I talk
Yeah.
about all the time in my trainings is the vulnerability of your information and what you give. So, one of the things that you need to be very careful about is, if you are providing real information, think about it first. Take maybe a notepad, write down what you're thinking of telling about yourself.
Mm,
Then review it again. And then see, when I tell people they look at their LinkedIn profile, are you giving your entire resume and every little bullet point? Is it too much information? Same thing with your personal resume. Look at the little things that you're giving. Do you need to give your exact date of birth? Do you
right.
need to tell them exactly where you live? Do you need to tell them your middle name? Do they need to know the names of your kids? Do they need to know where you went to high school or college? Maybe they do. Maybe you want to go there. This is a personal decision. But remember, every little piece of information that you give is a vulnerability that makes you unsafe. And what can happen? We were just talking about it at the very beginning, Scott. You brought it up. Stalking and so forth, it can go to a whole other level. So staying within the app can be a safety platform, but it doesn't matter if you hand everything over on a silver platter.
Yeah, we talk about cyber stalking and physical stalking, and when we were talking before we started recording, you said, yeah, there's not, it's kind of the same thing now, you
It is.
know. I have a friend who uses some of these apps sometimes. So I asked him, I said, do you ever look these people up and try and, find their LinkedIn profile or verify who they say they are? And he said, no, I don't have time for that. I just try and if there's a connection, great. If there's not, he's on to the next connection, or attempted connection. And so, but that's, a unique situation. He also said that he sees where some of the people in their profile, to your point earlier, they'll put, a lot of details about where they live and work, and to the point where they're putting practically their office address out there for people to see. And if somebody had some nefarious deed that they wanted to do, they could do that. Or if they
Yeah.
became disgruntled with you because you didn't swipe left or upside down or whatever it is that you got to do on these apps,
Right.
that there is a real concern there. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about too is we talked about messaging is kind of where that's where you can get pulled down the rabbit hole and fraud could occur, right?
Yes.
But one thing from on my side, on the, let's say, trust and safety side of the cyber angle here, is what I tell people is don't leave the app. And I think you'll probably agree with me here. Have your communications on the app, because as you are escalating the relationship and you're working through the relationship, you'll probably come off the app eventually. But one thing that we definitely saw at Facebook, and I'm sure they continue to see this, but it's where people will make up the chat. They'll fabricate a chat, so you put the chat bubbles in there and it'll be somebody saying something horrible, something that's very much out of character, but they put it in there, and then they'll write a complaint into the application and say, hey, this person's harassing me online. And that could get you removed from the application. Not that the app is going to call the police or try to have you arrested or something like that, but they'll kick you off the app. But that's the power that they have. And if that's something that is important to you, because there are limited ways to meet people, and we're in, I hope, a post-COVID world, but it's really hard to meet folks out there still. So do you want to be removed from the app for some type of alleged violation? I think people need to be careful about going into a text conversation on their phone. But I also tell people is archive those conversations. If it didn't work out and you don't have, you're not moving forward with a relationship, archive the conversation. Don't just delete it. I don't know if you
Absolutely.
have any thoughts on that.
Oh my gosh, you're hitting the nail on the head. I hadn't even been thinking about that, but it's so interesting for you to bring up that concept, because that is exactly what I've told people to do. Just in general, whether you're
Yeah.
dealing with dating or anything else for that
Good point.
matter, when it comes down to it, and I have a friend that has a situation where a boyfriend really turned into the kind of stalker that's a nightmare stalker. And sure enough, I told her, I want you to screenshot these conversations on the actual text messages, screenshot them, and then send them to me. So
Good.
I can then
Archive it.
archive them. You have a secondary location in case that person ever gets a hold of that phone and kills the phone. You know what
That's
I
right.
mean? So that's a really good point that you've made. Archiving every single thing that you've said and every single thing they've said back to you. So, like you said, they can't fabricate any kind of a chat, or this may become something that's even more serious, where you're going to have to file a police report because it gets so dangerous and they claim they haven't said these things, and yet you have it saved. So I think you're brilliant on the fact that you said saving these chats, just top priority. Never delete anything from any conversation you've ever had. You and I were just commenting on our emails. We never delete any of our emails for that sole purpose. And it's not so much, because somebody might say something bad. So we can go back and find what we did send, find what we did receive, and memories of a report that I did a year ago. Oh yeah, I remember sending that. Let's review it again. So just having the archives is brilliant, Scott. That was a really good thing to bring up. I think it's top priority.
Last question? What's your sense for how to how people can protect themselves if they're going to be online, they're going to be out there on these dating apps and putting some level of an authentic profile because you're trying to have an authentic match, right?
Yes.
Trying to share information, but what can they do in the real world to protect themselves?
There's some little tweaks you can do. I mean, as I said before, the first thing to do is to make sure you're not giving too much information. Be
Yeah.
very, very limited on what you provide at the beginning. When setting up a profile, instead of giving your full name, give your first name and maybe a pseudonym that you want to use, like a pen name instead. Um, Not that you're trying to lie, but just a pen name just for the purpose of people not being able to look you up. Don't give your employment information like you had mentioned. You could probably say, oh, I'm in sales, or,
Yeah.
I'm in retail. Or you can give an industry, but don't say what you do and where you work. Just be limited. You could give a generic location. Don't even give your zip code, but, I live in the Los Angeles area, or I live in the New York area, and don't narrow it down too much. I know on the private profiles where you're not going to show the exacts. I don't know exactly how all the different profiles work on dating apps because I don't use them. But I do understand that sometimes you can put in a zip code. You can do that
Right.
privately so you get close to the person, but then don't give that up on your public profile. Okay.
That's a great point because that was another issue that my friend talked about was you can turn on locator and just see who's like in the area
Yes.
with you.
Okay.
I
Good
would
point.
recommend not even using those apps, but I don't
Do
know.
not enable your location.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm so glad your friend brought it up. And, he's comfortable with that. Everybody has their own comfort level.
yeah.
But for security purposes, I would highly recommend never having your location turned on any app. I don't like it on social media. Now, I like it when the bad guys do it. But when it comes to your safety, I understand that people want to be on dating apps because it's a great way to meet people. So just limit your information. When it comes to your date of birth, don't give your date of birth. If you want to give your age, that's fine. It gives them 365 days to try
That's
and
right.
determine what day is your birthday. You
Yep.
don't have to give it. You don't even have to give your zodiac sign. Just the
Mm,
basics. You could say you're a dog lover, but you don't need to show pictures of your dog because you don't want them to know you have the black lab, or the toy poodle, or little things that give up the personality and who you truly are. When you're first getting into this, you need to be careful. And when they're offering up too much love too quickly,
mm,
your radar needs to go up.
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
One thing that I push on everybody, and I know you already know this, Scott, and I know you're going to agree with me on this. I tell this to everybody: trust your gut.
Mm,
Please, when your gut's saying something doesn't seem just quite right, it there's something not right. Trust me when I tell you, you can trust your gut even if everything looks perfect. And all of a sudden you get this little twang inside that goes, why am I questioning this? Oh, I'm being silly. No, you're not. You have a sixth sense that tells you. So if something is just tweaking you even that little bit and your gut's going, I do wonder, then you should be wondering. So always trust that. So as long as you're careful on limiting the kind of information you put out there, trusting your gut, keeping notes on everything, as Scott, you said, archiving every conversation. The only other thing I would recommend, if you are talking to them for quite a while and you decide to go off of the app and you
yeah.
start texting on a regular cell number, keep in mind that there are apps out there where you can create a secondary number that overlaps on your phone, whether you use Google Voice, which is free through your Gmail,
And it's
or
great.
Burner app that you pay
Mhm.
for. They're out there. You can use that to protect you from. It doesn't mean that you're trying to hide yourself, but remember, if they're not legit, they're going to be doing that anyway. So just
That's right.
protect yourself. And if anything starts to get a little bit weird, turn off the conversation immediately. Make sure you've archived everything. And then if anything goes bad, file a police report right away. That's my high recommendation.
And the only other thing I'll add to that is when you do end up meeting in person, and I'm sure you would agree with me, meeting in public areas around people during uh, normal meeting times is probably really important. The only
Yes.
other thing I'll add to that too is I take this from where I used to work, and I wasn't the undercover, but we would be protecting an undercover. And what we'd always tell our undercover or assets that we're going to go do something nefarious was, you don't trip, you don't get in somebody else's car and go someplace else. The meet location is the meet location. If they want to go someplace else, you can't change at real short notice, because that's what would happen all the times when we buy dope or guns. The bad guys would be like, "Oh, hey, the drop location is now changed." Nope, we're not doing that. So
That's a brilliant suggestion. Being at that, being at a specific open area plaza where there's lots of restaurants, and then
coffee shops that are
no
well
other
attended.
place,
Yeah,
one
just
location, that's it.
be around, and at least initially. But the other thing that, and I think, and this is where I'll leave it with you too, because I want you to tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you and how they can engage here. But to your point about trust your gut, if you think something is nefarious, or if you think the person is hiding something, can they reach out to you? Is that something that you would encourage them to do?
Having the person that you're unsure about.
Yeah, no, having somebody reach out to you to
Oh, to
investigate.
me.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, if you're wondering some of the other safety things that you can do, some of the ways you can protect yourself, or if you're in a situation where you're unsure, definitely reach out to me. My company is Camelot Investigations. My email is Sandra at CamelotInvestigations.com. And you can also call me toll free 888-584-3393. And I also have my OSINT website that will help you learn more things about how to protect yourself, which is opensourceintelligencetraining.org. So absolutely, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody at any time if they're worried, they're concerned, or they just want to have a better understanding of how to secure themselves in these online situations, as well as once it's carried over to the actual in-person, like you brought up. So thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. And I'd be happy to help anyone at any time.
Absolutely. We've got training coming up in a couple of weeks that we're sponsoring you out here in Phoenix. If you want to talk about, give a quick plug for that.
Absolutely. I am so grateful for my partner in crime, Scott Walker, of Walker and Associates. He is hosting my 2-day open source intelligence training on April 28 and 29 in Phoenix, Arizona. You can see all the details on my website at opensourceintelligencetraining.org. But this is an awesome training. It is completely hands-on, fun, interactive, and I promise you, you're going to get so much information and learn about the dangers out there and how to secure yourself online, and then how to do in-depth searching in a way that you've never known how to do. The class is a thought process. Scott's been in it before. He knows what it's like. And both public and private sector enjoy this class, whether you're in law enforcement or any kind of government position, as well as all of the private sectors, whether you're financial industry, software, security, pharmaceutical, aerospace, healthcare facilities, attorneys, lawyers. They're the same thing. CPAs, all industries come to this. So it is a fun training, and I would love for you to come. Reach out to Scott or myself, and there's plenty of information online. Please come and join us. We'd love to have you there. It's a lot of fun.
And you're going to be in Fort Lauderdale too with the same class, right?
I am. And next month, May 19 and 20, I will be
There
in
you go.
Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm being hosted by Prosegur Security.
I
They
love
are
those guys.
awesome.
Yeah.
And they're good friends of both of us, right?
Yeah.
We're
Robert
very
is.
gracious to our good friend, Robert Dodge,
Yeah.
who is supporting me on this as well. And thank you for that. But thank you for letting me bring up
Good.
both Phoenix and Fort Lauderdale. We'd love to have you there.
Well, thank you, Sandra, for talking with us and sharing your perspective. It's been great catching up. And I will post this on LinkedIn, but I want people at home, share this with your partners, share this with your family members. This is not going away. It's not something that we'll just get over once we get out of COVID. We want you to be safe. The world is changing. It's not getting safer. So how do we keep people safe? Well, you fill your head with information. You'll be safer just by knowing how to keep yourself safer. And for Sandra, you can get a hold of her on her LinkedIn profile. I'll put that below, as well as my LinkedIn information. But if you have any questions or comments, put them down below and we will answer them. Thanks so much, everybody, for following along.